Used car prices have just hit over $31,000, according to this article, and it warns that used car prices will only get worse. Now, I've been saying this for some time, that the used car market is overpriced and a nasty situation for buyers. You would not believe the type of crap that is being peddled out there. When you take into consideration the very low quality of cars on the used market, that 31,000 looks even worse. Not to mention, new car prices are sort of governed by how much banks are willing to lend buyers who have average to good credit. This isn't the case with used cars, where most people can get approved but with ridiculously high interest rates. Nothing is limiting how overpriced used cars can get, and quite frankly, they're about to get far more expensive in the next few months. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in and listening as always. So today we have another article on MSN talking about the used market, and it starts off with, used car prices have been falling for the past 2.5 years, but things have just made a turn for the worse. According to iSeeCars.com, the average transaction price for a used car that are 1 to 5 years old hit over $31,000 in March, which was an increase of 317 from last year, and the first time that the year-over-year figure has gone up since October of 2022. $31,000 is ridiculous. Now, to put things into perspective, in 2019, the last year before the pandemic, the average transaction price for a used car was about over $20,000. So that is a 50% increase in the price of a used car over the course of 5 years. 50%. That's insane. Wages haven't gone up 50%. Your average buyer isn't 50% wealthier. Some people's bills may have gone up by that amount, but no one has 50% extra in terms of resources to buy cars. New car prices have actually gone up higher, from $37,000 to around $50,000 currently. Now, while that might be more, that is actually only a 33% increase overall compared to the 50% increase in the used market. So as bad as the new car market is, the used car market is much worse. Anyways, to continue on with the article, it says, one very bright spot for used car shoppers can be found in the EV segment, where the study found prices were down an average of $3,602. Prices for sedans, coupes, hatchbacks, and minivans also dropped by $865, while SUV prices were up. Well, that isn't going to be a bright spot for people who aren't buying electric cars. A lot of these articles like to include electric vehicles in these discussions without talking about the downsides that lead to people not wanting them in the first place. Take me for example. For me personally, for instance, an electric car just doesn't make sense unless it's a second car. Just from a range and logistics standpoint, it doesn't work. And most people are like me in that regard. Now, this article doesn't mention the average used price of an electric car, which is around $27,000. Now, that could be more or less depending on the source you look into. But the point is, that's not really much better than gas used cars, especially when you take into consideration the risk of the battery needing to be replaced. Most people can't afford to take that risk. Now, I'm not an anti-EV. I'm not saying a used electric car doesn't make sense for anyone. Some people it certainly will, but for most it doesn't. Anyways, the article continues. If the tariff situation doesn't change significantly, Brower said the average price could rise by $1,300 to $3,800 over the next 6 to 12 months. So if you thought that used car prices are bad now, they're going to be much worse in the next few months. We're still reeling from the pandemic shortages, so the inventory of used car prices is low, and there is no limit for how high used car prices can get because their customers are usually the ones that can't get approved for new car loans. So they're in a really bad situation, and used car companies like Carvana and CarMax have no problem taking in those buyers and charging them 10, 15, 20% interest. And the thing with the used car market is, sure, the average price is lower, but that doesn't take into consideration the fact that a lot of cars that were like $5,000 or $10,000 back in 2019 are now $10,000 and $15,000 cars. The value you get in the used market is absolute trash, and in a lot of cases, you're paying through the nose for it. Anyways, the article continues. With the pandemic-induced spike in new and used car prices still fresh in consumers' minds, buyers already know the frustration of higher automotive costs and lower affordability. We could see that pattern again in the coming year. This quote acts as if these high prices really ever went away. We just went from insanely high prices to just really high prices. That's why it's still fresh on consumers' minds. Automakers today are trying to gaslight consumers by using the pandemic level prices as a reference point. By using that comparison, these prices seem reasonable, but they aren't. Nothing is reasonable about the current car market. High prices, high car payments, high level of delinquencies, high levels of repossession. Nothing is balancing out anything. Everything is just high. This is all BS. Normally, these factors balance themselves out. High delinquencies and auto loan defaults signals for automakers to lower prices. But in these cases, automakers just keep them high. Nothing makes sense anymore, and we're all suffering for it. Anyways, links to the articles are in the description below. Let me know what you guys think about this mess. And as always, if you enjoyed this, make sure to click like and subscribe. See you in the next one.